Here to talk to us about the state of affairs in the educational system in the great city of Benton Harbor. Elnora Gavin, an activist advocate, was recently elected to the Benton Harbor Area School Board of Education. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And congratulations on your election.
Thank you so much. I appreciate all you do for us.
Well, thank you, and I'm glad you're here in the studio with us. Let's begin with your election to the Board of Education, Benton Harbor. I don't think that any educational system in Michigan has played out in the urban community more than what we're seeing in Benton Harbor. Let's talk about your goals, your vision for the school board and for the Benton Harbor School District.
I'm so glad you asked. So I did a complete overview of my vision for the district. I've surveyed people, I've talked to students, I've talked to parents, I've talked to a lot of people. And we did a YouTube video, yesfreshstart.com.
Right.
What we want to do, what's a major goal, is to get those class sizes down to 15 students per teacher. We want to get all
From how many students now?
Some of these classes have 30 and upwards of 43 students in class. Some of these teachers are not receiving their planning period. It's a setup for failure.
Right.
And so we want to get that number down, and what will happen when we get that number down is, one, peace of mind in the classroom. The teachers will be able to give that one-on-one support. It's what everybody wants, and it'll be safer.
Right.
And the academics will improve as well, because they'll be able to focus on the students.
Right.
Another thing, with this whole dismantling of the public school movement, is they got rid of a lot of the programs that our kids love. They got rid of a lot of the arts and the careers and technical education programs, those hands-on programs that keep our students excited and involved in education. And it also helps them to provide a skill that our community and the world needs when they leave school.
Right.
So those programs were gone. And then, of course, I think across the state, a lot of schools lost their driver's education programs, which is a nightmare for our cities as well.
Yeah. So you've laid that out. I mean, that's the perfect model for a school for a school system. How attainable is that, though, for Benton Harbor? I mean, how attainable can Benton Harbor reach that space where the class size is reduced from 40, 35 to 15, and where you're talking about bringing those programs back or resurrecting those programs back?
I'm glad you asked. I think it's absolutely realistic. I believe that once you have those leaders who are student-centered and who are willing to make those decisions, then everything that's needed will be added onto us. There's Perkins funds for grant dollars that provide grant dollars for CTE programs. A lot of our programs are doing very well, but there were state consultants who came in and recommended shutting them down. So there's a desire for them, those programs. And the other thing is, once parents start hearing that we're getting those numbers down to 15 per class, that's a safer environment. Parents want to come back to Benton Harbor area schools. They do not want to be busing and driving all over the county to send their kids elsewhere. They want to come back, and as the students come back, that's more dollars per student, and then we're actually doing well with those dollars.
Yeah, it's interesting you talk about the busing issue, because when Governor Gretchen Whitmer back in her first time wanted to close the school, one of the issues that came up was some folks would say, well, what's wrong with these kids, going to St. Joe to go to school there and so forth. I'm just curious about your take on that in terms of deconstruct that for us.
That was ridiculous. It was just wrong. Imagine these students went to school with each other and they developed those relationships all these years, and then someone at the top says, we're going to dismantle your school. We're just going to close your high school. We're going to separate you among the schools. And some of those schools were even talking about which athletes they wanted. It felt like a slave trade, quite honestly. And that's not what we do when we value education. When you value education, you invest in those schools and you figure out how to give the kids what they need. So it was a very scary time, but quite honestly, it wasn't the first time that our schools had been threatened of closure. There was a young man who told us that ever since he was 9 years old, every year his school was threatened to be closed in Benton Harbor area school. So the high school, of course, was the most popular facility.
Most prominent too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But many elementary schools, every school that I attended has been closed except for the high school.
Yeah.
So it's something that's been happening here and even in Detroit and elsewhere. That's
right.
just
So
awful.
so you sit in a unique place now, though, because the high school has been the embodiment of the struggle for equity in Benton Harbor, right? We have the water crisis, but the high school, the closing of the high school and successfully forcing Governor Gretchen Whitmer, a Democrat, to step down, to back off from closing the school. I think it embodies it. Now that you are a member of the Board of Education, I mean, you're privy to information that we may not be able to see. I want to get your take about this recent news flash about the partnership that the state is doing with, what do you call it, lowest performing schools?
Yeah.
That includes Benton Harbor. Tell us your take on that.
Yeah, first of all, I don't even like the way that's rolled out.
Okay.
To slap that label, that's almost like if you were in a franchise business and the state said this is the worst tasting food, you know, on the block.
Nobody's going to buy it.
Exactly. So to even do it that way is just wrong. I think that there needs to be some accountability. They need to admit that these were one of the top targeted schools for dismantlement over all of these years. And so we're going to step in and we're going to, you know, provide some supports to help bring this school back to life that it deserves.
Right.
So that's the first thing, is the narrative. It's the way that you label it. You don't do it like that. And then the other thing is, in the past, partnership agreements have been what I have always called the black school codes. Those are those, they have provided, like, they have required things that other schools didn't have to do. Like, for example, a lot of people didn't know that in these partnership agreements in the past, they would they would require these unrealistic benchmarks. And then if the school district does not reach that benchmark, then they would have to get rid of, say, 25% of their staff or 50% of their staff or completely restructure. And
So they set you up to fail.
It's an absolute setup for failure. Absolute setup for failure, because the teacher shortage is the worst thing that any school could ever have, right?
It's amazing. So this partnership, though, I mean, does it bring anything to the district, to the school district, to the Benton Harbor school system?
So right now they're saying that partnership agreement is going to be based on what the superintendent decides and what the school board and the community decides, and that sounds good. And I hope that that's what they will do.
Right.
In the past, what has happened is they would get, and I know because
I mean, do you feel, let me ask you the question, do you feel that this partnership, lowest performing, do you feel that it's a backdoor way to try to come back and kneecap Benton Harbor schools?
It always was. And I'll say this, the person who's leading this partnership agreement is also the person who was the director of the school reform office. And the school reform office closed many schools, you know, over 100 schools in Detroit were closed.
Yeah.
And so, and they called it a partnership agreement before, and they had the superintendent at the front of the room in those closed rooms,
Right.
but then they also had a representative from Whirlpool actually facilitating that agreement, Whirlpool Corporation actually facilitating that agreement. And so sometimes it seems like, you know, our people are leading a thing,
Right.
but in those closed meetings and in those closed sessions, they actually have these corporations and other organizations that don't have our best interests at heart making major decisions.
Right.
So I'm concerned about that. I'm going to be looking out for those types of things.
So being a member of the school board, the Benton Harbor Area's Board of Education, you have a seat at the table, you have a say, and you have a platform.
In January.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I'm told that the representatives from the partnership agreement will be meeting with the school board next week. So the question is, will they allow the new school board members to come in and be privy to those meetings?
But you can always ask for that when you take over. You can always ask for, you know, retroactively what happens 3 or 4 months before. I mean, these should be public information.
It absolutely should be.
So let me ask you your take on the Benton Harbor High School. Since 2019, the big fight. You know, I felt like it was an Armageddon battle to keep this school open. And I still go back just to think about the fact that the high school seems to be the only institution of its kind in the city itself that keeps the city. So how has it been since 2019 from your perspective? I'm sure that plays into why you ran for school board.
Absolutely. So here's the thing.
Right.
2019, a lot of people do is they will see this big fight, they will see that we won, and then they'll go back into their corners and think that it's game over. But
they go back to sleep.
Yeah, they go right back to sleep. But I didn't, of course. I still watched what was going on, and at the time, the president of the school board was asking for a partnership agreement that looked very similar to the other one. And so we had to, there's some internal battles as well. We have to fight the folks who are, I hate, for lack of a better word, double agents, who are supposed to be working in our best interest but are not. So
there's always internal collaborators telling the external collaborators to come in.
Absolutely. So even after the governor pulled back, and I was glad that she did, I would have preferred her to kind of admit some things. But of course, you know, that doesn't happen in politics all the time.
Right.
But even after that, there were still some programs that were closed. There were some switching around of schools that were closed as well. And so, and the CEO that was hired, he had hired the executive director of the school reform office to come in and lead Benton Harbor area schools. Well, we called her the shutdown specialist because from the inside out, she was closing programs and getting rid of staff. And that doesn't happen without some people at the top who allow that to happen.
Yeah.
Which is why, you know, I finally decided that I need to be on the school board because fighting from the outside, I mean, that doesn't always work.
I always like to say the governor did not just pull back out of Benton Harbor. She was forced to stand down. I think everybody, all of us, forced her to stand down. So let's talk about into the future here, because I want our viewers to pay attention to this. You know, we have committed to keep Benton Harbor in the forefront here in Southeast Michigan. You know, I think it ought to be part of the conversation. Whenever we talk to the governor, the head honchos at the state level, we want to make sure that Benton Harbor is in the conversation. In 2023, what should we look forward to? What should we keep our eyes on as it relates to Benton Harbor education?
I would say that instead of this partnership agreement that mimics anything from the past, we need to have a fresh start community benefits agreement, something that really has all of those things that I outlined, that also has something, a reparations package in there, that criteria that will really rebuild our community, all of the people at the table, fully financing the project. Some sort of a restorative justice kind of thing. Absolutely. And then making sure that we have time to heal. Once you come in and destroy an organization, there has to be some healing time. And so we were not only hit with COVID, we were hit by the state of Michigan prior to for several years, up to about multiple decades. And so understanding that, we need them to acknowledge that, stop with the labels, and then really, really give us the time and the resources to heal. And what we need to have is we have all these Democrats in place, they need to wipe out the debt. Completely forgive the debt and allow us to have an actual level playing field before they ever consider comparing us to anyone. A clean slate. And I'm glad you mentioned it, because I looked at the debt, it's $18 million. I mean, $17 million with all the buttload of money that the state has that Governor Gretchen Whitmer brags about. All she has to do is close her eyes and open her eyes. She can wipe that debt away. And so you want that to be part of the new Democratic agenda, the legislature in Lansing? Absolutely. It needs to be a top priority. They can make excuses now. They can say, well, we got Republicans blocking us. Absolutely. The Democrats are running Lansing. They need to get it done. And they say they love black people. Not just Benton Harbor. We need to look at the other black schools who have been impacted as well. School districts, yeah. And that's how you get your base excited about your leadership. You show that you actually have, you actually care about education. And you fully finance it. There should be no more loans or anything like that when it comes to funding education. Yeah, yeah. Interesting. Final question here. As we move forward, looking at Benton Harbor, the education and how it's going to play out. Anything else that you think we need to know, and anything coming down the pipeline that we need to watch out for? Well, right now I have to say that unfortunately that student-led that group of students,
Right.
the Peace for Life Youth Ambassadors,
Okay.
who fought to keep our school open, are now fighting to stay open.
Right.
Because this interim superintendent has removed Peace for Life from the school district calendar. They fought to keep the high school open. We need that to be back on the district calendar. So we're fighting for that. We would love for folks, give a call to the school district and tell them Peace for Life needs to be on the calendar.
What's the name of the superintendent?
Calvin Butts.
Okay, Calvin Butts, you're hearing. We need you to reinstate Peace for Life. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having it. All the work that you do. We really appreciate you.
Thank you, thank you. Elnora Gavin, the newest member of the Benton Harbor Area School Board of Education here, talking to us here on Sunday Nation. Stay with us. We'll be right back.